What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Mishmash Podcast. On today's episode, my guest is Ricky Stevens, Colts Neck High School head freshman and assistant varsity basketball coach, lead coach at Go Up Strong AAU, certified personal trainer, and speed and conditioning coach focusing on youth athletes. Ricky, thanks so much for taking the time to come and hang out with me on the podcast today.
Yeah, I'm super excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I always like to kind of start with how I know the guest and, you know, what our engagement is in terms of that relationship. And I guess I got to start with your reputation, right? Because a lot of times, you know, people say like, oh, the reputation precedes somebody. But in your case, the actuality of it far, far exceeds the actual reputation itself. So I first heard about you. You were legendary in this household, thanks to your Go Up Strong team, the select squad. One of your players, we're familiar with a couple of the kids on the team.
Okay.
But one kid in particular, Henry, we became really friendly with the family. And so his dad, Mark, great guy,
Phenomenal.
Mom, Jen, excellent family. If you know his older brother, Emmett, just great people in general.
Yep.
And so Mark just spoke so highly of you. And it was really funny because the most important thing to me in terms of my kids and their basketball journeys is coaching. I think if you can find the right coach and pair that with a player, that's really what's going to help to determine their success. Right. And so, you know, they found their forever home with you for Henry. And I just remember hearing nonstop, like they were always talking about you. And then Jackson's Sure Shots team ran into the buzzsaw that is your select team at Sportica. And I got to see it firsthand from the bench. I don't know if you've coached probably thousands of games at this point, but I'll never forget that one because some of our kids were like limping off the court in tears. It was funny now I can look back on it, but that was a rough one, man. And that team that we had was pretty good. Like we were going up against other, you know, fifth grade teams and winning in tournaments and stuff. But that day was not our day. And so suffice to say, once Jackson had the opportunity to come and try out for Go Up Strong, I was so glad, and my wife too, that he wound up with you. And one of the best things to happen to him. So,
No, I appreciate that. And starting with like that's a really special team. And what people don't realize is a lot of basketball is about structure and organization. And my biggest thing is it doesn't matter how old the kid is. You know, maybe they can't grasp all the fundamental concepts, right? But they should be introduced to these concepts that I'm teaching at the high school level, even if they're in third and fourth and fifth grade, because you'd be surprised how smart these kids actually are when you push them and you challenge them. So one of my coaching philosophies is, hey, you know, we may not be able to, you know, do certain things X's and O's wise, but we'll work towards them every day. That way, you know, once you get to middle school basketball and you get to high school basketball, these concepts are not foreign. So the select team that you mentioned, I've had a lot of those kids for 2 and 3 years now. So we've been hammering home the details, you know, the dribble at back doors, playing the right way, spacing the floor, moving the ball, taking pride on defense, running complex sets. And it wasn't always pretty, all right? But if you can kind of keep a group of kids together and they're bonding on and off the court and they're getting better every day, the select team is what the end goal could be, you know, if the kids are committed, they're given 120%, and you're actually taking the time to teach them those concepts. So they're a great group. I'm super proud and lucky to have those kids because, you know, they show up every day, they're super committed. And I hope that other people see that and understand that, you know, kids are not too young to understand things that we think are complex.
Absolutely. One of the quotations I remember when I was earning my my master's in education was that kids in the classroom, in the gym, anywhere, kids will rise or fall to the level of expectations that you set for them. And that's just something that stuck with me in terms of my teaching, my own coaching, even just working with the kids in general. So I love that you said that because I think kids aren't given enough credit, especially, I mean, I guess that was, you guys weren't even the fifth grade team. That was probably fourth grade that year.
We were 4 select at that time. Yep.
So to think about it, it's pretty wild too, because I look back, I didn't fall in love with basketball until I was 14. I was not a sports kid growing up until that point. And so to see what these kids are doing at 8, 9, 10 years of age is wild. What I also love about that team is each kid is clearly competent and capable, right? There's not, from what I remember from that team, there really wasn't a weak link anywhere. Yep. But there also wasn't a singular dominant force on the team. And that's what really impressed me with your coaching and what you got out of those kids. You got because they worked as a unit, and you could see the foundation that you laid for them the ball movement, the movement without the ball, those are hallmarks of a high level of basketball IQ, high level of coaching, and all of that. But it does help when you have kids like Blake and Spencer and these other ones that can just, pull up from distance, finish, at the rim. It was fun to watch. It wasn't fun to be on the losing end of it, but it was fun to watch. I definitely got to admit that. Yeah, so if you're down to discuss how you got involved with AAU or Go Up Strong in the first place, I think that'd be cool because I feel like it overlaps with when we started our journey too.
So I'm actually happy that I kind of have a platform to share this story because people think that, I've been doing this for a while and this is something that I kind of always had, in my plans, but it really was not that way. So for those of you who don't know, Kyle Fagan is the founder of Go Up Strong. I believe he founded the program in about 2016. Him and I went to high school together and we knew of each other since grade school. Just Mid-Monmouth was the more popular thing back then. I went to Eatontown. He was in Tinton Falls. We knew that we were going to the same high school at Monmouth Regional. So we knew of each other for a long time. We played high school basketball together. And then after high school, we kind of went our own separate ways. Before I got into basketball and personal training, which we'll obviously talk about a little bit more later, I was actually in government for 5 years. I was actually a chief of staff for an assembly member up in East Orange. Actually, this was actually an assembly person in Roselle at the time. The East Orange position came later. I just happened to be going into a Wells Fargo to open an account, for a campaign thing. And as I'm walking out, Kyle's walking in, and I have not seen Kyle in years. I'm talking years. Maybe, a few years ago at the basketball court, but we haven't seen each other in a while. So he's like, after we catch up, he's like, I have a basketball program. I've been, looking forward to reaching out to you because I wanted to see if you were interested in coaching. And at this time, I'm, like I said, running a campaign, working full time. I'm actually still doing my master's program. So my schedule is loaded. So, me being the person that I am, I didn't say no. I was like, I don't know if I can make it work. But he was like, just come to a practice and, see how it is. See
that's
if
how
you
they
like
get you.
it. And that's exactly how he got me. So I go to the practice the next day. And there's a kid that I still have a relationship with to this day. He was in 5th grade. His name is Carter Whitman. And struggling a little bit in the practice. But you could tell he's a talented kid. He's a great kid with a bright future. So I'm pull him to the side during the practices. I'm like, look, I love your game. Don't get discouraged. Just continue to work hard. Take coach's criticism. Listen to what he's telling you, all right, and try to apply. If you can do those things, you'll end up being a great player. So I had all intentions of walking out the gym that day and not coming back. But as I'm walking out the door, Carter comes up to me and says, Coach, are you coming back tomorrow?
Oh, killer question.
Yeah, you couldn't say no to that. So I ended up coming back the next day, and, we ended up building a strong relationship. Long story short, I ended up taking over the team that he was on, which started as one team. One team led to three teams led to 5, and then here we are later with 10 teams.
Oh my gosh!
It's
and you coach girls teams as well, right? I'm pretty sure my daughter played one. I think we played you guys in a tournament maybe last year. Or
yeah. So the program actually, we've got our first girls program maybe 4 seasons ago, and I think right now we're probably up to about 7 or 8 teams in the program.
Oh, that's
now,
awesome!
Which is phenomenal because it was tough to get started, but once you get a team, and then you're visible, people will start to kind of gravitate towards it. So right now I have 2 teams. I have a high school girls team, and then I have a 7th grade girls team as well.
Okay, so then it was definitely the 7th grade
Yes.
team, probably when they were 6th grade. That's why my mind is blown because you are such a natural with it, and I think that's again, it's one of those things. There are a lot of people who coach, right? But there are coaches, and to me, there's a difference there, and you can just see, or I can see that. The rapport that you have with these kids, like my kid especially, loves playing for you, never wants to let you down. That's kind of his problem, right? Like he's not a people pleaser. That has like a negative connotation to it, but he never wants to let anybody down. But to me, that speaks to your character and your leadership ability because it's not like you're forcing them to do it. They sort of rally around you. Right. And the fact that you're able to get so much out of the kids at all age levels, which is cool. Now, what's the youngest age group that you currently coach?
So I actually took on a new team, 3 gold.
Okay.
And I'm super excited to get those guys rolling.
Is there a kid named Dylan from Hazlitt?
I have quite a few Hazlitt kids. So Dylan's on the team. There's another kid. I think his name is Chris Dolan.
Okay. Yeah. Do you know his dad?
I used to play basketball with his father back in the day. So that's how I knew him. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
So it's like it's nice to see like Hazlitt slowly trickling
We're
into
getting there.
the program.
Yeah.
So that's exciting to see.
No, that's cool. Okay, yeah, I wasn't sure. So it's funny. Dylan is so Jackson's all in on basketball, but Dylan is all in on sports. It's funny because they live down the block, and I know to slow down in the summer when I'm coming down, just because he's going to be out there, baseball, soccer, basketball, you name it, and I know something's going to come flying into the street, so I watch. But he's a great kid too. It should be a fun season.
He's an
for
athlete.
That group.
You can just 100%. See in one practice, he's an athlete.
Yeah, exactly, and so that makes it fun. So what would you, from your perspective, what do you get? What's, I guess, the most enjoyable aspect for you in terms of coaching, since this wasn't like a lifelong dream, this wasn't something you've been doing forever,
So one of the things that I knew about myself, even when I was a kid, was that I was good with kids. Like even, as a 12-year-old kid, I had something in me that allowed me to connect with younger kids. And I didn't realize what that was at the time. But as I got older, I eventually wanted to become a teacher, just because I always wanted to kind of, help the next generation kind of come up. And I loved math at the time. So like, I'll be a math teacher. I get to help kids develop and do math and kind of try to do things together. But I somehow ended up in government. That's a whole nother story with my basketball career. Ended up at Rutgers Newark. But with the whole basketball thing, like how it kind of ties together, I always say that it's fate. Because with basketball, and this is my personal perspective, especially in 2024, the kids like to play for people that they can relate to. All right. But when you're doing it that way, there has to be a certain level of respect. So I think that one of my strengths as a coach is being able to meet these kids where they are, having a good relationship with them, but also have them understand that there's a level of accountability that's going to be had here. There's a certain standard, there's a certain expectation. And as long as you understand that there's a line there, that both of these things can exist. We can be very close off the court, all right, but as long as you understand that, when it's game time and it's practice time, you need to be locked in, because the expectation for me is that you're growing and getting better as a basketball player. Winning games is great, but at the end of the day, I'd rather lose every game and these kids are getting better than doing certain things that kind of gets them by. Because the bigger picture is, these kids want to play middle school basketball. They want to play high school basketball. They want to go to college. They want to go to the NBA. They all have these lofty aspirations. So, it's my job as a coach to make sure that they are doing things weekly to prepare themselves for whatever it is that they aspire to do. So it's rewarding for me to be able to work with them and help them, strive towards whatever it is that they want to do with their life. And the best thing about it is, these character building traits that we're, allowing them to kind of grow into will eventually help them off the court as well. So, it's rewarding to be able to be a part of their lives and help them become something that's ultimately bigger than the sport of basketball.
And it truly is. This is what frustrates me. There's a lot of good things, obviously, about AAU and just youth sports in general. But I feel like more and more over the last few years, just negative aspects of it. And it really comes down to perspective, I think. And unfortunately, there are so many parents who don't see it as a bigger picture thing. They can't buy into the concept of, those smaller victories, building traits that, that matter off the court. Right. And it's just bizarre to me, because that's really what sports is all about. It's not about wins and losses. Like, and I always laugh, like, cause you see, like you said, everybody has those hoop dreams, right? They have the aspirations where they say that they want to, either see their kids get there, or the kids themselves say that they want to get there. And I always laugh when you look at these like NBA guys, so guys and WNBA players too. Yep. When they make it to that level and they reflect back, I've not once heard a single athlete talk about that, that time that their, fourth grade AAU team won that tournament and they got the green t-shirt, right, or they won 15 games. Like, it doesn't matter. Right. And so when you have these parents who program hop because, this team's not winning enough or whatever, it blows my mind. Yeah. And one of the aspects too that I love about AAU is the competition level, I guess, has been diluted a little bit because there are so many programs and it's so easy. Yeah. And again, I guess this ties back to what I was saying about the parents. It's so easy if you're dissatisfied with your kid's playing time, you can go and make your own team. Yep. And it's almost unilaterally to your kid's detriment, because you're just setting them up for failure, really, right, long term.
And then you're also not teaching them to be tough and have to figure things out. It's just, all right, this isn't working, let's go there. Instead of trying to figure it out, have a conversation with your coach or hold the kid accountable. Maybe what the coach is telling him that he needs to do better, he's not doing and working towards those things. So it's tough because I think I do like the fact that there are other options, because maybe you are in a situation that's not the best for the kid, and and then there are other opportunities for them to go and play elsewhere. But I think one of the things that's missing, and obviously we'll talk about this with the personal training stuff, is that these kids need to be mentally tougher. When things are not going well, quitting should not be the option. What can you do to be better? And this is something, if you're on the sideline with me, you hear me say this a lot, because kids will do this, they'll blame the referee, they'll blame the calls, it's the basketball, it's this, instead of holding themselves accountable. So my biggest thing is control what you can control. Win in spite of the referees, win in spite of the ball. Like, win in spite of these external factors, and focus on what you can control. And if you do those things, right, you'll get better, and then the outcome that you're looking for will be there a lot of the times. And if not, you're at least learning and getting better in the process.
100% agree. And my problem with kids who say those things, they're really just echoing what they're hearing from their parents, which absolutely drives me nuts. And I hold myself to an incredibly high standard in terms of that kind of behavior. Like, I'm never going to blame somebody else for something, because who's blameless in any situation, right? There's always something some action I could have taken. And so I expect that my kids will conduct themselves in a certain way. And, I can't take credit for it ultimately, because at the end of the day, it's decisions that they have to make, right? It's how they comport themselves. And I give them credit when they're out on the court. Jackson does a pretty good job of, if he misses a shot, he has a lot of rough shooting days, but you won't see his shoulder sag. He's not going to start stomping up and down, the court. And you see that with a lot of other kids, and there's just a lack of accountability on the parents' part of it.
Right.
And what I love about your coaching style too is, and I feel like this connects pretty much to the conditioning, the speed and agility training too. We'll get to that in a second. I love that you are able to be, I don't want to say hard on the kids, but if a kid makes a mistake, you let them know. You do it in a constructive way, which I think is great. And the approach is good. It's firm, but it's fair. And that I think is the best way to do it, because kids need to know that it's okay to fail, right? Everybody makes mistakes. It's how do you react to it the next time?
Right.
And I mean, obviously, if you have a kid, who's dribbling it off his foot every time he's bringing the ball up the court, 2, 3, 4 times in, something's going to have to happen. And that's a different situation. Yep. But I'm talking about more just like, a missed pass or a poor decision on a play, something like that. Yeah. The only way they're going to learn and not make that mistake again is to be instructed, to get pulled out for a play or two and get put back in. Yep. But one of the things that kills me, and this connects to, I guess, the whole rest of the conversation, societally, people are terrified of struggling and failure in general. And I think that has a lot to do with the issues that this country has with nutrition and fitness levels across the board for adults and children, the obesity levels in kids, the prevalence of diabetes and so many other conditions. These kids are getting set up for heart problems in their 40s, when they're in single digits. It's crazy. And so in terms of what you do, I guess speed and conditioning is a little bit different, right? Because that's more sport specific, like you're trying to help them move. But I guess let's start there in terms of your motivational approaches and maybe some of the struggles and challenges that you see that these kids maybe deal with.
Yeah. So, and I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it is the fear of failing and what comes with that. And I think that, us as the adults need to, continuously have that conversation and let them know that it is okay to fail, because nothing comes from failing bad outside of, you have to do it again. But with failing comes learning. So I think that, putting them in situations that are tough, that are challenging for them, will only make them mentally tougher. And I think that that mental toughness component is what's really missing from not only the kids, but like I said, throughout the country. And I think it's just something that we need to address head on and understand that, without struggle, things are not going to come into fruition, at least the things that we want. So it's an important conversation, and I don't think that there's an answer that's really out there right now. Me personally, that's not something that I struggle with. I was always okay with doing my best and kind of living with the results. And I don't know if that's something that you're born with. I don't know if that is a product of my upbringing, being the oldest and having to take on a lot of responsibility. I'm sure there's a lot of things that kind of go into it. But I do know, that the mental toughness, and again, like this is things that I say a lot in both aspects of basketball and the training side. You got to be able to push yourself to the level of discomfort, because with discomfort comes growth. Right? You're never going to get better, being comfortable. And I know it sounds so cliche, but it's reality. You got to be able to push yourself to that next level. If you have all these lofty expectations, whether it's playing high school basketball, playing Division I basketball, if you want to look like this, this fitness person that you aspire to, kind of be like. There's a lot of things to it, but I think that is a great challenge that this world kind of needs to figure out how we kind of get people there. But unfortunately, it's not something that I have the answer to.
No, and I don't think anybody does. And it's frustrating for me. I've always been, I may not have looked like it, I may not look like it now, but I've always been a fitness junkie in the sense of I love the struggle, right? So to me, there's nothing like yesterday I did a double workout. I did like an hour core and then like 90 minutes of lifting. And what I love about it is I find it to be serene, right? Like, I mean, I got my music on, I'm just zoned out, I'm locked into what I'm doing. And that's really it, right? It's a focus thing.
Right.
For me, when you're and believe me, I'm not lifting anywhere near what you are. I've seen the Instagram videos, right? But whatever it is, it's a constant battle really between three things: the weight, whatever it is, the resistance that you're at, gravity. But really, to me, it's more the mental struggle, right? And it's funny, like I feel bad for myself when I have an off day, because that's when I'm the hardest on myself. The second I have a thought of like, oh, I really don't want to go today. Oh my God. Like I tend to have my best workouts on those days because I'm relentless with that. And, my biggest struggle really has been more finding balance, right? Because I would push too hard and my body couldn't keep up. And now, now that I'm in my 40s, I have to be more cognizant of it. And really, it's more for me, the decision making that I've made is really focused on long term, right? Like when I turned 40 last year, I looked ahead and I thought I was going to have that sort of coming to God moment of like, oh God, like here's my mortality.
Yeah.
And it was the opposite. I was like, holy shit, there's a lot of time left. Yeah. I want these to be quality years. Right. And I don't know, like I think for me, it makes the gym part of it easier, but I see so many people struggle with this. And I had mentioned this off air that like what made me want to have this conversation with you was back in January when I was seeing so much of your inspirational material that you were posting. And I was just like, man, like it's such a shame that people, they come into the new year. So many people use it as a reset opportunity, but they go about it completely the wrong way. And I would guarantee you that, like we were saying before, probably up to 99% of resolutions have already been broken or given up on or whatever. And I think I have an answer for why it is, but I don't have a solution for it. To me, our society has just become anesthetized because of things like social media and everything. It's about quick fixes. It's about really envy. It's looking at wanting what someone else has and not wanting to put the work in, right? That's what kills me with stuff like Ozempic and everything. Like it blows my mind that people, and listen, I'm not going to judge anybody for whatever choices they make, even if I think that there are better and healthier ones, right? But it speaks to the mentality to me more than anything else. Like I was able to lose 40 pounds after working with a nutrition coach because I learned the right way to go about it. And that to me is that's what I wanted. I wanted the framework to make long-term changes that I could keep for the long run. Using a shot or whatever, it just feels like a short-term fix that is just, again, short-sighted. But that's what's great about fitness. There's nothing that you can do. And remember like back in the day, like the infomercials for like, these crazy fitness gadgets, I guess. You're like, oh, just sit on your couch and it'll do the work for you. And like, no, that's just not how it works. And I think that's why so many people struggle is because they're not willing to put in the work.
Right. I think that society has kind of shifted towards this instant gratification. And like you said, there is nothing that you can do in a short period of time to get yourself to look like that fitness influencer, or forget fitness influencer, whatever it is that you envision for yourself, whatever you want your body to look like, it takes time. And I know you and I had a conversation last week because as of what will be tomorrow, a week ago, was my 5-year fitness journey anniversary. And 5 years is a long time. I have always been, I'm 34 now, between 16 to 29 160. I have a very high metabolism. It was very, very challenging for me to put on weight. I never liked to lift. I didn't lift in high school. I didn't lift in college, even though I was supposed to. I was a kid or young adult who just could not really get into fitness training. But once college ended and I needed something for myself to strive towards something. So the NBA dream was gone. So since I was 2, I was playing basketball. My aspirations, what I wanted to do, what I woke up every morning was to work towards being an NBA player. So once that dream kind of fell to the side, I needed something different to wake up every day and strive towards something. So for me, the gym is something that I can do every day that mentally I can feel like I'm getting better, that I'm doing every single day. Do I love lifting? Some days I do, but even my coworkers will tell you people who are in the fitness industry do not like lifting every day.
Right.
No one likes to lift every day. There are days we feel like we don't want to do anything, but you understand that it's a long game. It's got to be just a part of your lifestyle. So if you want to, we're talking about the New Year's resolutions. A lot of these people are like, I want to look good for the summer. That's a short-term goal. And if you really want to kind of achieve certain goals, it's got to be lifestyle. It's got to just be a part of your daily routine, whether you're going 3, 4, 5 times a week. And it's got to be, you're going to the gym like you're brushing your teeth every morning. It's just got to be part of it, because if it doesn't get to that level, then it's going to be very, very challenging for you to be specific and intentional in getting there every single day.
Absolutely. And isn't it said that 6-packs are made in the kitchen, right? So it's not even
right.
The whole perspective that people have, I think it blows my mind, because aside from being short-sighted, it's unachievable in a lot of ways, right, and unreasonable. And again, this is what I mean, that they're setting themselves up for failure. But I don't want to go off on that tangent, because I am curious. So 5 years ago, happy anniversary.
Thank you.
So what made you make that decision? Like, how did you get involved, and what are you involved with specifically in terms of the fitness side of things?
Yeah, great question. So 2019, I was just finishing up my master's program. I didn't have a car at the time, but I was commuting, so I was at home. So I was going to the gym a little bit, but only when I had access to a car. So April 6th, which was a few days before the anniversary, was when I had first got my car after my grad program. So I got a car, I want to say it was Friday or Saturday, and I was like, you know what? There's no excuses anymore. All right, Monday, first thing in the morning, you're going to go to the gym. You're going to prove to yourself, all right, that you can commit to going to the gym, and you're going to do it at least 4 times a week. I made a commitment to myself, because I had been doing so many things. Like, I had just finished college, which was something that I didn't see myself doing. I had just started the grad program, and that was going phenomenal. So I was like, you know what? Anything that you put your mind to, you can do. So let's add another goal, to that list. And it started with fitness. So started 2019 April. I was the kid that was in the gym, on my phone, on YouTube, looking at influencers, watching what they were doing, and then trying to emulate those movements in the gym, having no idea what I was doing. But I'm a very social person, so I ended up making friends in the gym with some of the people who had been there for a while. And then they would show me certain things. So after a while, kind of developed, wasn't the greatest routine, but it was something. But yeah, then I was able to kind of keep myself consistent through that, even through the COVID period, which I know was tough for a lot of people too. But I did a lot of calisthenics, push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups. I got out and ran. I was a guy who bought the resistance band. So once I developed that routine and I was able to maintain consistency through COVID, I knew, that I was, on my way to kind of being consistent and kind of working towards the goals that I had set for myself.
Yeah. And it's frustrating to think back to that time, right? Like, you would have thought that so many people would have come out of the COVID stretch in better shape.
Right.
But again, I guess the reason why they didn't was the mental toll of it, right? Everybody was so strung out and stressed out. And for too many people, I think they view fitness and exercise as a stressor, when really it's the opposite. There's a strong, powerful mind-body connection. Yep. I mean, I can't even count how many studies there are that prove that, there's a mental health component to getting exercise, whether it's getting out for a walk or lifting. I mean, so you do a lot of, in terms of your own routine, like you do a lot of like compound movements, compound lifts and stuff, right?
Correct.
So squats and
Yep.
deadlifts, all that.
Yep.
Those are really the best things. You get an endorphin rush. Like,
Yes.
it's physically good for you to do that. And I know for me, Like, I was wiped yesterday. I was at the gym, I think, for 3 hours in total. And when I walked back to the car, I was exhausted, but I felt like I did something,
Right.
you know, and that carried me through the rest of the day. And that's what frustrates me with this country specifically is there's so many options. There's no reason not to do it. But I think the problem starts from just the mindset. And a previous guest that I had on who he works at the Max, which is like I guess a chain of like nutrition and fitness oriented programs. He gave just basically the one thing that can destroy all the arguments. Like, okay, so you can't commit to doing something 7 days a week. Well, why not 6 days? Why not 5 days? Why not one day? Why not do it once?
Yep. And
that's the kind of thing people don't want to hear, because that's when you get into a conversation with somebody and they start getting to that level where they say, you know that they just don't want to do it. They're not committed to themselves. And that's what just, it hurts. It hurts that, like, you know, you can't be accountable. You can't hold yourself accountable. And I guess it just comes from a place of being unable to really reflect and really take a hard look at yourself. And listen, it's not easy. I've always been a deep thinker, right? So I'm always analyzing myself and situations, but I'm able to accept shortcomings and stuff because I view them as opportunities for growth and for change.
Yep.
And too many people, unfortunately, don't. They just can't emotionally handle, you know, the idea that they're not perfect, maybe.
Right.
And it's so in terms of your beginnings, so it was really more of the social media influence that kind of got you there, which I think is cool, or got you going, let's say.
Right. It helped me to kind of figure out a strategy to be consistent and understand what I'm doing, because I think a lot of people have the fear of not knowing what to do, but this also goes back to that people don't want to be uncomfortable.
Right.
So, but like you said, there's so many resources out there. There are so many apps and people that are on social media that kind of give you like a step-by-step plan. So, you know, there are opportunities to learn, but you got to be willing to want to kind of put yourself out there and do it.
Well, so that aforementioned self-analysis, right, just happened right now in real time, because I wasn't trying to like dunk on anybody there, but I realized from the nutrition side, I was exactly those people. Like I had access to all the same things that so many people had, and yet I struggled with it until I found what worked for me. And in that case, it was a one-to-one coaching situation. There are other opportunities though. So you have like the corporate programs, and this is where it starts to get a little iffy, right? So you've got stuff like Beachbody, and I guess to a lesser extent gyms, so like CrossFit and things like that. But the problem is they have a business model, right? So those things are not invested individually in their clients because they're really more customers than clients.
Correct.
For you, now you do personal training like one-to-one? Is it small groups, both?
So I do both. The majority of my training sessions are one-to-one, but I do some small group training as well.
So to me, that is the toughest on the trainer, because you're really you're sacrificing the opportunity to work with more people, to make more money, to do, I guess, to have a broader reach, but it's also a shallower reach. I think the wider you go, right, in terms of like the classes, if it's an online program or something like that. Right. And it's tough because it would be great if everybody could have their own personal trainer, obviously. But I don't know. I just feel like there's starting points that there's no excuse not to find a starting point, whether it's going onto Instagram. And so here's the other issue too, in terms of social media. To me, it's a double-edged sword because there is a glut of content. And just like anything else, especially nowadays, like you really need to source your stuff. Like, so have you ever heard of Jeff Cavaliere?
I have.
So I've been in physical therapy on and off, you know, for all kinds of things, back problems, knee problems. Again, I pushed too hard.
Yep, I have those things too.
Yeah, things get messed up. and you know, they laughed. I just went in for it was like tendonitis in the elbow, and they were goofing that I was in for my spring cleanup or whatever. And what I love about Jeff's content is he comes from a physical therapy background and conditioning and strength, right? So this is just me personally, I skew more towards those types of content creators because there's something behind it other than just their physique. Because that's what happens. A lot of people go on, you see these, it tends to be more guys for us. You see these dudes that are just unbelievably jacked, and it's not that they aren't giving you the full picture, but the odds are you're not getting the full picture of how they got that way, how they maintain that, which is really a big thing. So it can be, I do get scared when there's someone who's never gone to the gym before, who's never lifted, who's never done anything athletic, and they go that route.
Right.
That's not something I would recommend. That to me, that's kind of like the Platinum Fitness route. Where
Correct. Yep.
The first week of January zombies, where you could tell people that have never stepped foot in a gym because they're just sort of shambling around and they're touching the machines and
Trying to figure it out.
yeah. And it's not like I want to go up to those people and offer help, but I've learned to stay in my lane and just everybody's on their own journey.
Yeah.
But so in terms of your fitness coaching, right? So what you do with what do you do with your clients? Like, do you take, their specific goals, or do you help them to figure out what they want to do? Like, what does a client situation look like for you?
Yeah. So it always starts with the conversation. I'm always interested in hearing what their previous experience is with training, if there is any at all. Obviously, their goals, whether they're looking to gain weight, lose weight, what's their inspiration around showing up, because that's super important too, because you want to make sure that they have the motivation to be there consistently. So you try to find those things that mean something to them. That way, like when you're on the journey, you kind of have something to kind of revert back to kind of keep them motivated and keep them inspired. And then it's about kind of just seeing them in person and, kind of seeing if they have any ailments, and then structuring a plan that kind of gets them towards whatever their end goals are. But I think it's the initial conversation is probably the most important, kind of see what it is that they want to go with it, and then kind of tailoring, their workout towards getting them where it is. Having conversations about nutrition, how are they eating, because that's a big part of it too. I know you kind of touched on it earlier, but a lot of nice bodies are made in the kitchen. Are you eating clean? Or, are you staying away from processed food? Are you in a caloric deficit or surplus, depending on if you're trying to lose or gain weight? There's a lot that goes into it, and I think kind of having those honest conversations and being straightforward about what you're doing in your daily routine kind of helps us as trainers get you to where you want to go. And I love it just because with basketball, in government, this now it just gives me an opportunity to kind of get back and help people. And that's always been like super gratifying for me.
And you could tell that you're a people person too. So I think it's like that. I can relate to that sort of innate or inborn desire to help people, to want to help them, because it also helps us, right? Like it's a reflection on ourselves. It's not like we're doing it to get, pats on the back or whatever.
Right.
There is something that we get out of it, but it's more, for me at least, like paying it forward and paying it back.
Yeah.
Now, on the nutrition side of things, for you personally, like what, are you still in like a bulking phase or you kind of like leveled out in terms of?
Yeah, I had this lofty goal of wanting to be 205 pounds. I don't know why I set that number for myself. And I think at the time I was around 170. But once I got to like the 190, 195, I fluctuate between, those numbers there. And I was pretty happy where I am now. And then once I learned, counting my macros, what it would take for me to get to 205 pounds, I was like, you know what? I did it for 2 weeks. I'm like, this is too much. It's too much eating. It's too much protein. And with my schedule, with clients in the morning and some, late mornings and basketball in the evening, it's tough for me to find enough time in a day to eat 200 grams of protein. And it's a lot. I'm very happy with where I am now in my fitness journey. For me, it's not about a specific goal anymore. Like I said earlier, like I wake up, I go to the gym with an opportunity to work hard and be better. It's so good for me mentally. If I'm having a crappy day, I'll go to the gym because it just makes me feel better. All that built up anger and frustration, I'm able to kind of release in the gym. So for me, it's just, like I said, it's just going to the gym is like waking up and brushing my teeth and getting dressed in the morning. I don't think about it. There is no, are you going or are you not, unless it's a rest day. And, now it's just, just showing up every day and trying to be better than I was yesterday.
Yeah. And even with rest day, and that's the thing too, like rest. So it took me, I guess I'm a slow learner in a lot of ways, right? Where it took me until 40 and 41 to really appreciate the importance, say, of rest, yes. Right? Especially in terms of building muscle and just allowing your body to recover. It was always, I was a pedal to the floor, like push person. And I would just get to a point where something would, get messed up. And then there's a recovery phase. And for me, that was more taxing than the work. It was the recovery. So finding that balance is important. Okay.
Very, very tough to do. It took me a while for me to do that too. I actually had a situation maybe last month where my body just shut down. no symptoms, no fever. My body just had no energy. And it was just like, you know what? We've had enough. It's time for you to kind of just cut it down. I had to take 2 days just kind of relax for a little bit. So your body will tell you if it's not from an injury, your system can really just kind of just, let you know that, it's time to relax. And I was, taking a rest day a little bit before then, but I was also pushing a little bit too. But I feel like we all have that moment where you kind of understand the importance of resting, and your muscles can't, like, and if your aspirations are to grow, your muscles can't reach their full potential unless you give them that time to kind of recover and regroup to kind of keep pushing forward.
Right, absolutely. And I think the most important moment, though, was the one that you just referenced earlier, where you realized you had a goal for yourself, which is great. That's a number one. If I was giving like steps for people to follow, you have to set realistic, reasonable goals for
Right,
yourself.
right.
And just, I guess, before I go into that, in terms of your clients, what's the kind of time frame that you offer or that they typically give you in terms of like they want to get to a certain point or want to achieve a certain thing? How long do they come in thinking it's going to take?
Yeah.
And then what kind of window do you give them?
Yeah, so I guess I've been fortunate enough to not have clients come in with these lofty expectations to, lose 10 pounds in 3 weeks or anything like that. I just try to get them to focus on the mindset of just showing up and being consistent. And the results that you want for yourself will just happen over time. You can, but it's just not wise mentally to go into it with a time frame. Because one, for us as personal trainers, it's very hard for us to kind of meet those goals. If I want to do this in 6 months. It's just better to kind of go into it with, this is the routine. I'm going to stick to it. Maybe we meet that goal. Maybe you exceed that goal and it happens earlier. But I feel like, at least from my experience, when you do put a time on it, it kind of takes away from the mental focus, and your perspective is a little bit different because, you're trying to rush through it instead of just enjoying the opportunity and to have an opportunity to kind of show up and work out every day and just work towards something little by little, because it's just tough to really think that things are going to happen with like a specific set of time.
Yeah,
It's unrealistic.
100%. And I remember every time I had sort of like peaks and valleys, right? From 20 till 39, let's say, where, I would be all in on the gym again, and that would last until I got hurt. And then it would be time away. And it was just this like really terrible, like push and pull. And it was always because I had short-term goals in mind. I was like, oh, I want to get up to this, lifting this weight or doing this. And again, it was stupid. Whereas when it finally clicked for me last year, I was about to start this program, the nutrition program, on June 1st. And so I said, by May of next year, by the end of May of 2024, that's where I want to,
Right.
be. And again, not necessarily a specific weight number or anything, just I want to be in the best conditioning, situation that I've ever been in that I can be. And thankfully I am. And it's because I took the long view. I didn't jump into the shorter stuff.
Yep.
And it's funny because the thing that shocked me the most in terms of eating healthy is how much I do eat. Like I eat every, and it's funny, and you can't fault people because they don't know, but like the comment for people who knew me before I lost all the weight and then now, that they're always saying stuff like, oh, you probably eat like a bird, you eat lettuce for dinner or whatever, and I just kind of laugh, chuckle, and shake it off because I eat so much. It happens to be good stuff.
Right.
But the amount that I eat now just for maintenance is what's preventing me from bulking, because I can't even imagine eating more and having to go through that whole thing. And it's just, I don't know. It's something that I think people are intimidated by, but it's something you can grow to love, but you have to be open to it. Like it kills me when when I would be at Planet Fitness and I'd see these people walking on the treadmill, holding on with one hand, holding their phone with the other, or worse, their gigantic white coffee at like 7:00. It's just like, there was clearly no thought that went into this in terms of like what you were doing. And what kills me is those people are the ones that infuriate me the most, because they've at least taken the step to be there.
Right,
They signed up, they're there, but they're just kind of wasting their time.
Yeah. It's just tough. I think the biggest thing is like, you don't want to go in cold turkey. So like we were just talking about nutrition. It's not like, I'm going to start on Monday. I'm going to eat completely clean. And let me go on record and say this. My diet is not completely clean. I love Chick-fil-A. There are certain things that I have not completely removed. But I think that if you're working out consistently, then you've earned your cheat meals. You can have your desserts, you can have your snacks, but it can't be everything in moderation. I'm sure people, you hear that a lot. As long as you can kind of control your portions and make sure that you're continuing to do the work, you can kind of enjoy those things that you love and then, still get the results that you want.
Right. Absolutely. And that guy from the Max had said he takes an 80-20 approach, right? So 80% of the time, he's all in on eating clean, doing everything he can. The 20% of the time, he's all in on not worrying about it because he knows the other days are going to make up for it. And especially if he goes on vacation or whatever. This is personally my biggest struggle is I'm trying to find that middle ground because it's very much an on-off switch for me. So my biggest problem is like sweets. I can't have candy, cookies, cake, none of that because it just avalanches.
Yeah.
And I know that about myself. So I don't need to have wiggle room with that. But whether it's craft beer or, something like Chick-fil-A or those types of things, I don't even like to call it cheat meals because I feel like then it's putting it in a negative connotation.
Right.
To me, I think of it as just something that you want as a treat or, just as a one-off thing, as long as it stays that way.
Right.
Because that's the problem is when it's the habit. And again, too, it's so like, let's say there are people out there that are Chick-fil-A 5 nights a week.
Yeah.
So you know what? If you want to make a change, have it 4 nights a week. Just start somewhere and just take that one step. But again, people just, I don't know, I think they're afraid of pushing too hard and failing. And it's just, I don't know, like it's all incremental, right? And so just to shift gears in that vein to your speed and conditioning training, right? That you want people to come in, whether it's to nutrition or fitness, you want to equip them with a toolkit, a skill set, right? So that they can learn and build off of that. You referenced it earlier, like you started off with, checking out the videos and stuff, and then you were able to get actual advice, in real time from people.
Yep.
And so I think that's important because that helps to reduce the likelihood of failure. It gives you more of an opportunity to succeed in whatever it is that you're doing. And that's what I think is important to shift gears to basketball now. The court time is great, right? Obviously, games are that's what you're playing for is the game time. But practice is the most important thing because that's where, everything comes from. But there's also something to be said for what you're doing when you're not on the practice court or the game court. We're big into skills training, speed and conditioning training too. And you mentioned focusing specifically on young athletes. I think that's a great place for people to start with their kids, even just from a fitness standpoint, because you're getting them moving, and that's important.
And I think with young athletes, it gets them to understand the importance of moving. And with my speed and agility or strength training class, like my primary focus is pushing these kids past their limits because we see it in adults, like they struggle to do that. So when they're there, and they're on the treadmill or they're on the rower or we're doing sprints, I'm really getting on them about pushing themselves past that level of discomfort. You have more. You can give more. You're here for an hour. Your parents are paying. Give 120%. If you can do that consistently over X amount of weeks, all right, you'll see yourself gaining an advantage. And whether you're playing basketball, whether you're playing baseball or football, you'll see it translate to your sport. But then it's also developing and building healthy habits because when these kids get older, I think it will help them kind of gain a level of comfort when it is time for them to, the sports are over. What are you doing to keep yourself active? I think this is a good transition in building those healthy habits early for these young athletes. And it's been going pretty well. And I've coached a lot of the kids who have been coming to the class, and it's really great to kind of see it firsthand, them really learning from the class and working hard and seeing it transition to their respective sports. But it's been pretty cool to see so far.
No, that's awesome. And do you go into it with a sense of like injury prevention too, like in terms of trying to help these kids? Because I know that there's, funny enough, the issue of overtraining, right? That there are a lot of kids who are overcommitted, doing too many different things, too much. And so learning how to move properly, I think is a critical aspect of, ensuring that they're staying healthy and,
So a big part of my program is plyometric training. So like jump training, landing, balance. I think a lot of these kids they don't understand the importance of that. And I think that translates to all sports. So that's like one of the primary focuses of the class, getting these kids to kind of jump a little bit quicker, land, have good balance, have good lateral speed, have good transitional movements, do different type of exercises. And I've come to learn that they really enjoy it. They like to be challenged. They like to work hard. But then, when they kind of hit that wall and fatigue sets in, then they kind of have that natural tendency to kind of want to scale back a little bit. But it's like, no, you have more. Your body has more. Your mind is telling you to kind of shut down, but push yourself through it. You'll see, that you have more to give. And if you can kind of continue to push yourself through those moments, then that's when the breakthrough, that's where the real growth occurs.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback right off of what you just said, because that's something that I've been focusing on in my own like weightlifting, right? Is hypertrophy and really working to failure. And it's sort of humbling, if I'm being honest,
Yes, it is.
to realize what failure actually looks like. And for people who are listening, in terms of failure, that means when you're performing an exercise and you cannot physically perform one additional rep at the weight that you're doing, not like failing in terms of not succeeding. And yeah, again, I'm trying to be more of an open book at this stage of my life and trying to, be not set in my ways and recognize that there's always room for improvement and ways to learn.
Yep.
And in terms of hypertrophy, like I just thinking back to when I started going to the gym at 14, 15 years old, it was always 3 sets of 10, right? Or if it's lightweight, you're doing 12 reps. If it's heavyweight, you're doing 8. Yep. Right. And I'm sort of frustrated and embarrassed to think about how much time I wasted and how much gains I left on the table because I wasn't working out, properly, correctly. And I love that you are taking that spirit and then applying it to kids, because that's just it. Like everybody's so anesthetized by comfort. They don't want to be pushed. There are, and I can't say everybody, right? There are some kids that have some, that.
Yeah.
And you got to be careful with some of them because you could push them too far because they don't have it. They don't have that switch. There's no off switch for that.
Yep.
And so I think it's cool that you have sort of that broader perspective, right? And again, it kills me when you see these parents who were focused, again, just on winning, but just on a specific sport and doing just practices and games and everything, because, I don't know, I'm a big music guy. I don't know if you're into music at all, but like I listen to everything and I play music too. And I may listen to something that's completely different from what I'm writing, but it has an influence on my mindset. I've learned something. I've pulled something from that. It's almost like a painting, right? If you think of it that way. And I look at the holistic view of young athletes in that same way. So for Jackson, for all 3 of my kids, they do skills training because it's important for them to develop the coordination, the speed, the efficiency, right? But then you have to apply it in a practice setting. You have to apply it in a game setting. If, in terms of being able to get up and down the court, that's where speed and agility training is important, And for my oldest son, who's 14, his focus now is strength training. Like he needs to bulk up. He made the middle school team both years for Hazlitt, but he looked like a 7th grader, even though he was an 8th grader. And I'm happy for him because he is struggling. And this is the first time that I'm seeing him embrace that, right? Like he couldn't even lift the Olympic bar, which I mean, I guess for his body weight, however it scales, it's probably, more. But in his mind, like that doesn't even have any weight on it, So for him, I think he was embarrassed that, I don't know if it was an easy curl bar, whatever it was that they used, he had to start with a smaller bar, but now he's, I think today going to do the Olympic bar and then he'll add more weight to it. And again, it has nothing to do with, he doesn't understand yet, cause he's new to it, that you never look at what the next guy or girl's doing because it has no bearing whatsoever on you. So, so I'm excited for him and seeing where he is in that journey. No, so you work with, what's the age range that you work with for the speed and agility training?
Yeah, so I have 2 classes. My classes are Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday, and they're back to back. So I have a youth class, which is traditionally about 9 years old to 13, and then the high school is 14 and up. Okay,
so it's not younger than that. That I like because to me, it's weird, right? Like there's this FOMO sense that I think you can get where you feel like you miss the boat or you wait too long to get your kids involved, so they're starting at younger and younger ages, which is crazy. Like I can't imagine being 6 years old and playing on some kind of like competitive, crazy AAU team. Like the kids probably still have like bath and bedtime, bedtime stories and stuff. Like it's okay. Like,
it's not there yet.
Right. Exactly. To me, I feel like, 3rd grade, 2nd, 3rd grade's like that sweet spot where you can start to at least do an introductory, level of stuff, whether it's basketball or I don't want to say strength training, but just, physical fitness, like moving and plyometrics are great. I mean, I don't know. I'd be curious what the long-term studies show in terms of like joint impact because of, again, like you said, it's a lot of leaving your feet. But I mean, there's nothing better for explosiveness
Right.
in terms of, vertical height
Yep.
and then just all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so you've gone through your philosophy for the fitness side of it. I'm curious, coaching wise, like how do you approach practicing in terms of like your specific goals for your kids? Like what is it that you want them to get out of a practice?
Yeah.
And
So I guess I'll start with the mindset of a new team. So priority number one is always understanding that it's a team game, right? And it's not about being an individual. It's not about just you. If the team is going to be successful, everyone's got to kind of buy in, and we got to do it as a unit. So moving the basketball, playing team defense. My favorite saying is, giving up a good shot for a great shot, making that one extra pass. And then it's about assessing the team and like where the strengths and weaknesses are. I'm really big on man-to-man defense. One pass away, being in help, 2 passes away, 1 foot in the paint, and kind of being on the string. And communication is a huge part of what I'm stressing with, whether it's the 3rd grade team all the way up to high school. The more you communicate, the more you're on the same page, the less breakdowns you have, the better you are defensively as a unit. And I always say like defense kind of leads the offense. And then I'm really big on structure. I think just me as a person, if you ever like saw my car or my apartment, like just very structured. So I think that's a big part of how I coach, just because that's how I am as a person, and I think that's just the best way to kind of be. So whether it's we need to learn how to rebound, we'll do a rebounding drill. We had 20 turnovers last game. We'll do a passing drill, a 5-on-4 drill, where it's more pressure, but you got to kind of see the floor and make certain passes. So practices differ based on the level. And then it comes with like assessing the team, what we need to do better at, and then tailoring the practice to kind of make sure that we're making those adjustments.
yeah, I've always been a defensive first mentality, right? And I mean, this stems more from my work with like lower level teams, right? So like more rec and whatnot.
Yep.
But even
Yep.
AAU, like it's been fun getting to fill in at times as an AAU coach, because the caliber of kids, the quality of their play,
Yeah.
their ability to understand those concepts more rapidly,
Right.
is great. But defense is one of those things as a starting point that like every kid, it's an effort thing, right? Like you can be a good defender. You
If
just
you
have
want
to.
to.
But right, exactly.
Tell these kids all the time.
Right. And so man-to-man defense, I think it's funny. I've been talking to a couple different people about this, like the European model of basketball, where the focus is really more on practicing and those kinds of concepts of, cutting, moving without the ball, understanding where to be after you make a pass,
Yep.
and then focusing on man-to-man defense. I think there's a fear of, from a coaching standpoint, of being exposed and looking like you don't know what you're doing,
Yeah.
because it takes an incredible amount of communication to have a solid man-to-man defense, because you have to know what to do if there's a missed assignment. You have to know
Right.
how to handle,
Yep.
are you going through the screen, or are you switching on the screen?
Yep.
And again, I think the kids are capable of it. It's funny, right? Like I feel like every kid nowadays does at least 2 sports or at least 2 teams, right?
Minimum.
And sports-wise, I feel like the best kids that I've had that weren't basketball first were like travel soccer kids, because they understand exactly like how to move. When they get to that higher level, some of my best defenders were soccer kids.
players,
Like they
yep.
couldn't dribble at all, but I didn't need them to, because they got the steal. They knew to kick it ahead to, they could make an outlet pass. And that was that. And it's funny, just to speak on this, because this has been coming up in certain channels on Instagram, right? About overcommitting kids and overextending and playing on multiple teams.
Yep.
I think I'm curious what your take is on it. I can, as a parent with kids that play on multiple teams, multiple programs, I can give a perspective for why we do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it's indicative of what the majority is, right? So for me, the number one reason was it was logistical. So we were all in for my oldest son on a program. That was it. That was his one team, his one program, and it folded. And it folded after all the tryouts happened for these other programs, and he had to spend an entire season not playing. So we wound up. It's sort of like if you're going camping or something like a preparation mentality, where like 2 is 1, 3 is 2. Like you always have to have a backup thing. So it started out with that. But what I enjoy about having my kids be involved in multiple programs is it's different looks. They can never get you never want them to get too comfortable and start to feel themselves. And I like that there's different challenges. So in certain instances, my daughter's a good example. On certain teams, she might have been among the better players, but then she's playing up on a team where she's the youngest. So she's clearly nowhere near that level. So she needs to have that struggle, and be able to code shift between being, maybe the focus of the offense on one team and then a backup player coming off the bench. I think there's benefits to that. Unfortunately, I think the reason that a lot of people do multiple teams is playing time or just other, I don't want to say negative influences, but for different reasons than us, I guess.
I think people have fallen into this mindset that, if my kid's going to get better, he needs to play more. And don't get me wrong, I think there's a lot to gain from playing time. But what I think is missing from a lot, which your kids are getting the opportunity to do, is the training aspect of it. So if you look at like basketball overseas, especially like in Europe, they practice almost every day, and they have far less games, where here we have a ton of games and practice once, maybe twice a week. So I think that there are things to kind of gain from playing for multiple teams. You hear different voices, different coaches, teach different ways. They have different philosophies. And I know I don't know everything, and I think if a kid's playing for another coach, maybe able to teach them certain things that maybe not be as important to me, or maybe I just don't kind of have that background to kind of teach certain things. But I think that there comes a point where it becomes too much, because now you have Johnny on 4 basketball teams, and now he can't be committed to any of these teams because there's just so much conflict. So now how is he supposed to grow with Team A if he's missed in practices every other week and he's not there for the game? The reason that the select team that you mentioned earlier in the conversation is as good as they are is because they've been so committed. And they've had so much time to kind of learn about each other, what their strengths are, how to kind of placate towards those strengths, and then just kind of having a lot of time to kind of rep and kind of figure it out. So I think multiple teams is fine. You just got to find that healthy balance of it not being too much, where it's just not kind of having an impact on some of the other sports that the kids are doing.
Commitment is the biggest aspect of it, right? So we make sure that we don't overextend ourselves specifically, but the kids too, because to me, that's the worst look, like to sign up for a program and never make any of the practices. And how can you expect to have playing time? And the perspective that I take is more looking at the coach. We're putting the coach in a really crappy position there, because now he or she has to make the decision. Do I play this kid that hasn't been here? How can I play this kid? And especially if there's like a talent gap, let's say, between a kid who's there, all the time versus that kid, the star kid who's on, 5 teams and never shows up. But then, and it kills me when you have coaches who do that. Like if you have a kid who's there, you have to reward effort in my mentality, and talent gets you, only so far. Right. And again, the commitment thing with that select team is remarkable, because it's really, really difficult to have so many people be that coordinated, because there's egos, there's all kinds of things that come into play. But that's where I think your perspective really, really helps, because I feel like they've bought into what you're offering there. And it's not, oh, well, my kid's on an A, because that's the thing, right? The obsession, A team, B team, C team. Like, to me, it's development. You could be on a C team, but if you have the right coach and your kid's getting more playing time on that team, maybe that benefits you more than being on an A team with a crappy coach where, and maybe they're not getting as much playing time. I don't know. It's
a lot of things that goes into it.
Yeah.
You just gotta, and it's tough because I feel like a lot of the parents, they don't understand basketball or just kind of like the landscape of AAU. So it's tough because they just don't know. They know there's wins and losses. The kid's happy, the kid's upset. So, I don't want to put too much of the onus on them because they just don't have that information. But the information is out there. Like just like with the fitness thing, like information in 2024 is accessible. So you just got to have these conversations and try to figure out like what's the best way to kind of go about it. Have those conversations and try to make it work the best way that you can for the kid.
Yeah, and you just got to put the effort in. Like I can't tell you how many times we've gotten laughed at, or Jackson's gotten laughed at for saying that he wants to be a professional basketball player. And like you said, every kid says it, right? But it's funny, whenever you think of like actors, movie stars, musicians, like the ones who wind up making it, so many times they had no plan B. Like that was it. That's all they were doing. And that's what makes me nervous with him, because since I remember nursery school, the first time he wrote on a paper was, what do you want to be when you grow up? It was basketball player. It has not changed. Yeah. It hasn't wavered at all. But here's my mentality with it. yes, statistically speaking, the odds of him even making it into college on a, an athletic scholarship are slim. That doesn't matter, because if he shoots for an NBA, his NBA dreams, and comes up short, he's still going to land so much further than people who don't even try. And that's what kills me.
Right,
These
yep.
parents who are like, oh, I know my kid's never going to play in college or whatever. That just it guts me,
You
because
hear that a lot too.
yeah, and maybe they're right, again, statistically, but I don't know. For me, my focus on my kids is equipping them, again, to sort of bring it full circle with the off the court aspects of this.
Right.
I want you to push yourself. You're tired today. I don't like when my kids are sick, and I try to keep them, from going to school, getting other people sick or whatever. But there are times when they have to go out and do something. And the number of times my daughter has had a wicked cold or something and played in 3 or 4 games because she pushed herself to do it. There's just those intangible aspects that are gained from the journey. And that's just it. And I guess to sort of put, a cap on it, whether it's fitness, sports, even nutrition, it really is a journey. And I think the people who are successful embrace the concept of it being a journey, like a lifelong thing, that there is, yes, there is a destination, but it's, what happens along the way that matters, not getting there and moving on to the next
You
step.
got to be able to accept those challenges, embrace them, but then also kind of have the mindset and perspective that there are things that you're going to learn along the way. And like you said, you may not end up at your end goal, but all those gems, those things that you can kind of take, whatever it is that you don't kind of end up at, you're going to end up somewhere. And wherever you end up, there are so many things that you could learn along the way that are going to be so beneficial for you when you end up, whether it's, Jackson may end up being in the financial industry, working on Wall Street. He could be anywhere. But there are so many things from basketball, from his training, from so many different aspects of his life along his basketball journey that are going to pay dividends when he's in those positions. So I think kind of keeping those things in mind without killing the kid's dreams are super important, because you hear that a lot. He's not going to go to college. He won't do these things. And it's you don't want to kind of kill a kid's dream. You want to give them something to strive towards, understanding that there are maybe you're right, but there's so many things that kid will gain along the way if he kind of believes that he can do it. And because confidence is everything. And if you're hearing from mom and dad that you can do certain things, then it's going to be very tough for you to kind of stay on that journey and keep pushing towards it. And I think it kind of hurts that kid in the long run.
Yeah, and to me, it comes down to communication and reasonable expectations. I tell them all the time, it's great that you want it, but you have to put the effort in to get there. What are you going to do to go there? And I'm really, really lucky that both Jackson and Sarah, my daughter, they are all in on doing the extra, right? So for example, we're going to a concert in a couple of weeks in Connecticut. We're staying over. I found a gym that's 9 miles away. We knew about these trainers or whatever. So I'm trying to set up a private session for them there. You would think, vacation, I don't want to go. They were so stoked. The idea of, being in a different state. But in terms of your training and everything, do you accept new clients? If people are interested in learning more about what you do, where can they find out that information?
Yeah, so I am currently looking to take on some new clients. I'm at ARC Training, which is located in Marlborough, New Jersey. They can go on the website. There's an info sheet there. You can kind of
ARCH, ARC?
ARCH, yep. Great question. Because we get ARC, we get ARK all the time. So ARCH.com. You can kind of go onto that website there, put in your information, let us know what it is that you're looking for. We have a whole host of trainers, me being one of them there. So that's a great place to kind of start, get some information about what we do, the services that we offer. Come check the gym out. It's a very, very beautiful space, and I'm not being biased just because I'm employed there. It is absolutely phenomenal with some very, very high-end equipment.
Which I've seen. I can attest to that. I've seen it. If that's what's on your Instagram,
it's a great place to be. So that's a good place if you're anyone who's out there that's looking to take on some personal training or have any questions. I like to think of myself as a great resource, and if you have any questions, I'm definitely someone who you can reach out to.
And speed and agility for the kids?
Yes. So speed and agility classes are also held at the same location. Be a little more descriptive. Right now, they're Wednesdays nights, 7 and 8. Friday night is 5 and 6. That's the hot spot. And then Sunday is 11 and 12.
Okay,
all
cool.
at ARC.
That's awesome. And then in terms of social media, I know you have a couple of different...
I do. So I actually have 2 separate pages. I have my fitness page, which is Reez Active, ReezActive. That's my fitness page. And then my now basketball account, which was once my personal page, is Coach Stevens 21. That is Stevens with a PH.
Okay, awesome. Coach, this was a blast. I hope you had a good time. I really appreciate you taking the time to hang out and talk to me. I think that people are going to get a lot out of this conversation. I see you working hard. You just know you inspire me. Anytime I need that, like, that kick in the butt when I'm at the gym or, sitting on the couch, I go to your page.
No, I appreciate that. And that's probably my main reason for posting. You'd be surprised if I take a couple of days off. People were like, hey, you didn't post today. I want to make sure that you were in the gym. Like, I kind of need that. So that was kind of like the background of like being consistent. Listen, I need motivation too. I know I may seem like, that person who kind of just gets up every day and goes, but there are certain things, certain people that kind of push me to. I think we all need that. And I think it's important for us to kind of uplift each other on this jersey because it's certainly not easy. So I appreciate you saying that. And I'm definitely grateful for you kind of having me on the platform. Yeah,
man, this is great. And hopefully we can send some people over to ARC and get some kids involved over there too. But once again, this was Ricky Stevens. And thank you everybody for listening wherever and whenever you are.